Hi, welcome back to Videos from the Ville. I'm Professor Charles Greenewald, and this is Introduction to City Planning. Today we're going to be talking about transportation planning, very big and important subject in this field. Well, let's take a look at our PowerPoints. Please follow along carefully with your PowerPoints that you've run off on your printer, or you just keep them by your side on your iPad or on your laptop. Transportation planning. We find that this is one of the most vital elements to any community, is how are the residents going to get around. We find that streets, highways, mass transit, airports, railways are all essential to an orderly movement of peoples and goods. When you find planning transportation, you need a comprehensive analysis. A comprehensive analysis of the ability of a transportation system to accommodate future changes with minimal costs and minimal impact to the community, if possible. So planning transportation involves a comprehensive analysis of the ability of transportation systems to accommodate changes with minimal costs and without negative impacts to the community. Okay. What are the levels of transportation planning? Well, one of the levels would be certainly the geographic levels. Geographic levels. Geographic levels, we have, of course, regional planning levels. Regional planning is aimed at the development of overall transportation for a large urban area. So regional planning is aimed at the development of overall transportation for a large urban area. Regional planning is aimed at the development of overall transportation for a large urban area. Regional planning is aimed at the development of overall transportation for a large urban area. We have sub-regional planning. This is aimed at the needs of a smaller area. You could have a downtown region, you could have individual communities, you could have neighborhoods. And nextly, we have corridor level planning. These are improvements that must be made along a particular corridor. We could be looking at a freeway, we could be looking at a subway line. And finally, the last geographic level for transportation planning would be spot improvements. Spot improvements are the needs that are found at particular intersections or particular segments of isolated highways. We find that planning for these facilities really involves a comprehensive analysis of the ability of the transportation system to accommodate future change in demand with minimal costs and negative impacts for the community, as we said before. That's our hope. Absolutely is our hope. We also have to be concerned about the time frames for transportation planning. Planning transportation projects can differ in times. We can have very short-range projects to very long-range projects. Long-range planning looks at regional transportation needs over anywhere from a 15 to 25-year period. The primary emphasis in a long-range plan is on determining the needs for developing fixed high capital facilities, such as a freeway or a major transit link that require lots of lead time and lots of planning. Now, one of the things that we use in transportation is an urban transportation modeling system. And the urban transportation modeling system has a four-step process. And we want to look at the urban transportation modeling system to look at trip generation. How many trips do we need from different buildings and different facilities? What's the trip distribution? Where are those cars and buses going. What mode of transportation is going to be desired by the people? Will it be buses? Will it be trains? Will it be cars? Um, the trip assignments, what routes will they take? The ultimate goal is to have of course, an optimization of the whole system. That the cars, buses, light rail, um, the uh, the if you will, the monorails, they all are working together to be able to transport the largest number of people to the most places at the cheapest price. That's what we'd like to achieve. Uh, we find that the urban transportation modeling system, we want to note how that this has spread. Transportation planning has spread across the country, and we find that it's at places where it never appeared before. We find that transportation studies have been done for every area in America with a population of more than 50,000 people. That's quite noteworthy, and I think that's quite memorable. The urban transportation modeling system, we need to note that planners will need inventories of characteristics that affect travel in urban areas, and those particular elements would include what would affect transportation. Well, one would be population. How many people are going to be here? Number two, land use. What is the land being used for? That'll affect transportation. Number three, economic activity. Number four, the existing transportation systems. Number five, what is the travel history of the people involved, the people that live there? Number six, what are the laws and ordinances involving travel? Number seven, what are the financial resources of the area? And number eight, what are the community values? Do they have a community value to try to ride the subway or light rail instead of cars, for example? Or would they rather walk or bicycle to work? The urban transportation modeling system is a continuing process. We find that urban transportation planning is a continuing process. We find that it's important to be aware of changes and monitor changes that might make it important, that might make it necessary to modify transportation planning. We want to update the data that serves as the base for our planning. We want to update the data on total population or a depletion of population, for example. We want to update methods that are used in our transportation planning, and we want to report on our findings. Well, taking a look at transportation briefly, the history of transportation, if you will, we find stone-paved roads in the ancient city of Ur in Mesopotamia, and these roads go back to 4000 BC. Until I took city planning as an undergraduate, I had never heard of a corduroy road. Corduroy road is a road that's made by placing logs on the ground and putting them in the perpendicular to the direction of the road, and then putting lots of sand on them to make them blend together. We find that Glastonbury, England, has one of the earliest corduroy roads, and that road dates back to 4000 BC. We find that there are brick roads that we have uncovered in India, and they date back to 3000 BC. The world's oldest paved road seems to date from Egypt, and it seems to date somewhere between 2600 to 2200 BC. And of course, we have one of the most famous roads in the world, the Appian Way, running the length of the Italian peninsula right through the city of Rome, the Appian Way, which is still there and many, many, many places. It runs the length of the Italian peninsula, the Appian Way. Well, let's take a look at trains. Where are the first trains? We find some of the first trains in England, or I should say in Great Britain, United Kingdom. We have the Swansea and Mumbles Railway. The Swansea and Mumbles Railway was the world's first passenger service. It was in Wales, and you find that it was a very large coach that people could ride in and would carry lots of luggage, but it was pulled by horses. It was pulled by horses. And evolved eventually, of course, into the train. You find that subways are first developed in London in 1863. We have London's Metropolitan Railway, and this is the beginning of the underground, or the tube. And there is a map of what the subway consists of. The subway consists of. There's a drawing from 1863. Actually, this is, it looks like a very daunting map, but when we first went in the subway in 2002, my children who were in 7th grade looked at the map and figured it out right away. It was very simple and easy to use. Well, when we look at transportation planning, one of the things that we have to do with roads is define all the different types of road systems there are. Let's look at them, and let's look at some pictures of them along the way in our PowerPoints. First, we have freeways. What is a freeway? A freeway is a toll road that can provide uninterrupted travel, or a freeway can be a full or partial access control designed road to travel at high speeds. So it can be a motorway or a toll road that has uninterrupted travel, or it can be a road that has full or partial access control designed to travel at high speeds. So that's a freeway. We also have arterials. Arterials are major through roads that are expected to carry a large volume of traffic. They're often divided into major and minor arterials for urban and rural. They're often divided into major and minor arterials. That's both for urban and rural arterials. There are large divided roads with occasional at-grade intersections with traffic lights that can stop traffic. And they're too short to be freeways. They're too short to be freeways. And we have collectors. Collectors collect traffic from local roads, and they distribute the traffic to arterials. This is traffic using a collector, is usually traveling to or from somewhere nearby. We have local roads. They have the lowest speed limits, and they carry small volumes of traffic. And I have a picture of a local road there for you. We also have cul-de-sacs. Cul-de-sacs are dead-end streets that end in a circle. And we have them all around us, whether it be in Lancaster County or Lebanon or Dauphin or Philadelphia counties. We have cul-de-sacs. Now, we also have to consider mass transit when we consider public transportation. Mass transit consists of buses, trains, trolleys, subways, and monorails. You can find the monorail in not only Disney World, but you can go to downtown Seattle and find one of the most famous monorails that works just superbly from the downtown out to the Space Needle. When we talk about mass transit, we always tend to hear criticism because it's always in need of public subsidy. Well, it doesn't matter much what type of mass transit you're talking about. All mass transit is always going to need some level of public support. All mass transit is always going to need some level of public support. And that's just the fact of the matter. You find that if we're talking about highway transportation, of course, we find lots of subsidies there in building the roads, for example, for trucks and for cars. So all mass transit is going to need public subsidies. You're not going to find mass transit that won't. We find, what does it take to have a successful mass transit system? A successful mass transit system will have the support of local politicians. Very important. Frequent service. You can't have people standing there waiting hour after hour. You need to have service running every, say, 15 minutes. You need to have well-publicized routes, well-publicized services. You need to have affordable fares. We find that New York City on weekends used to reduce their subway fares to encourage people to ride the subway. It's not true anymore. And you need safe carriages and safe stations and clean carriages and clean stations. Cannot emphasize that enough, particularly in the aftermath of this summer's activities, for example, in New York City, where the subway had fallen into great disrepair until Mayor Rudy Giuliani came into office, and Rudy Giuliani and Michael Bloomberg, as Republican mayors and an independent then mayor, were able to restore the subway system of New York City, make it highly successful and very safe. And now, again, it is fallen on hard times, and I wouldn't recommend riding it right now. I don't know how safe you might be. So very unfortunate to watch the slow dissolution of New York City under the current mayor. I've never seen one mayor wreak so much havoc on one city in such a short period of time. Just follow the evolution of the city in the New York Post. It's quite an odyssey. So this is mass transit. Again, successful mass transit requires the support of local political authority, frequent service, well-publicized services and routes, affordable fares, and safe and clean stations and carriages. If you have other questions you want to ask me on public transportation, give me a call, send me an email. I'm happy to talk to you or to correspond with you. This is an important area, and I hope some of you will end up working in mass transit. You find that in New York City, of course, it has always been such an important issue that the police force that takes care of patrolling the subways is a whole separate police force from the New York police force. The New York police force, and then you have the transit police. Okay, we're going to wrap up transit, and we're going on to the next subject. Okay, thank you.